Well, hello there, YouTube audience, man. I'm going to try and cover something that I get asked all the time, and that's about making thumbnails for videos. The toy that I'll be doing the illustration with is this guy here, the Maximum Destruction Battle, and sometimes you get ideas for thumbnails actually from the box artwork, which are fairly stylized interpretations of the toy that's inside, but sometimes on the back here they get, well, a picture which is very similar to what comes out of the box. Mind you, there's all sorts of Photoshop tricks done here. A bit of ghosting of the cars to show movement, and also where the monster swirls around, they've put these, like these rings of satin around to give you the notion that it's actually turning. The picture here, which is illustrating to us that the monster actually breaks apart if you hit the right spot, is interesting because it's eye-catching for the fact the Monster Jam truck is hitting here. There's a bit of Photoshop work there, show like an explosion. It doesn't actually happen, but the robot does fly apart, and you're sort of thinking that's fairly eye-catching, isn't it? But toy box artwork gives you ideas for thumbnails, it does for me. But sometimes when I look at stuff you think, well, okay, that's great for a toy box. It's all about catching the eye, but sometimes there's a little bit too much going on to be a good thumbnail on YouTube. One thing to try and do with thumbnails to videos on YouTube is to try and keep it in context of what's actually seen in your video. What was unusual about my review was the fact that we used two of the same sorts of cars, so I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll do that as a double act in my thumbnail. It's actually something I try and do as often as I can. It's a bit of a thing that I try and do with my thumbnails because you want to try and have your thumbnails as a little bit of a signature to who you are. But the problem with that is that people just come along, rip off your theme or your idea. So quite often you'll find me morphing and changing my thumbnails as I get ripped off by other people. Well, I've set up something here as what I would call a bit of a mistake. I wouldn't have a thumbnail like that. It's a little bit too busy, and the important things are a little bit too small. Sure, you could come along in this spot here and maybe put a Hot Wheels sign or a Monster Jam sign to fill in that void, but all this stuff here is going to look very small as a thumbnail on screen. What I very often find with thumbnails, less is more, so it's a case of stripping stuff away and playing with something a little bit more refined. Well, the Max D figure's quite an impressive sight, but the problem with him, he's actually sort of squarish. If you look at him here, you could all draw a box around it, but our thumbnails are actually rectangular. I'm just running my finger around the rectangle now. The aim of your thumbnails is to try and be interesting in that whole rectangle. Now, if I come in a bit closer, we start to fill out a rectangle shape, and I think that's a far more interesting look. But looking back on the box artwork, I do like the fact that the robot is skewed around on this axis a bit. The fact that the legs are like that, the body's turned around a bit. Can I apply that to our robot here? So maybe if we turn this around its axis a bit, then turn the base, do we get a more interesting looking robot? To me, for the fact that the legs have been turned, it gives it a fair bit more of an aggressive stance. And if I go back to here, the thumbnail may end up looking like this. I was also toying with the idea of adding another monster truck, basically just putting some blue tack on him, sticking him on the front there, to make it look like ones that's come up to whack the monster. Or is this starting to look a little bit too busy now? I've got a funny feeling less is more when it comes to these things. Okay, got some blue tack in on the wheel there. Let's take a look back to see how it looks. What do you think? Yeah, it's sort of standing out. The fact this one's a blue monster truck, everything else here is sort of grey and, dull colours. Maybe it will work better for a different monster truck. Well, I've just stuck on one of my favourites in the same spot. Let's take a look now. It's on the tilt a bit. We say on the piss a bit where I live. There, if I straighten it up, it would look something like that. I'm not sure about that either. And I'll be quite honest here, I think the simplicity of seeing something like that as a thumbnail, and maybe putting the Monster Jam sign in here, in the groin area, or maybe Hot Wheels in here, might be a winner. And I know you'll ask, well, Leo, where do you get the Hot Wheels sign from? Well, you can actually rip it off the box here. You can take a photo of that and in Photoshop cut it out. If you want the Monster Jam, triangular sign there, it's there. You don't need good resolution pictures to whack into thumbnails. But I think, when I see people using the box artwork as a thumbnail, the problem there is that there are a lot of other people doing the same, and in the end, your video really doesn't stand out against the others. And my last little tip, and it's something I know that works, is sometimes when you put together something fairly cute and something fairly evil and square it up to be a thumbnail, it can pull in a lot of people. There's sort of rules about thumbnails. Basically, you can't show breasts or females' breasts or no nipples. You can't show bum cracks. You can't show genitalia, which would be around here, but there's no law against showing a My Little Pony and a robot. Especially if it's Pinkie Pie. But who knows, I might use this as a thumbnail in this video and there'll probably be people screaming, "Oh, but Leo, it's not indicative of what's inside this video." Well, my argument is, yes it is. And one of the strange conundrums on YouTube is I've seen some really crappy videos with amazingly complex and interesting thumbnails, and I've seen some amazing videos with some very, very crappy thumbnails. And I'll tell you what, I think 90% of the battle on YouTube is having a great thumbnail. The other curious aspect to this toy is the fact that it's so dark. So what I've got to do here is I've got to pump a lot of light into this to sort of brighten it up. And what's interesting, if you look at the box artwork here, it almost looks like it's silver, the way they depicted it here, where in fact it's not like that at all. It's quite a gunmetal grey. And if I go back here, you'll start to see all the lights that I've got around, trying to get that dark colour to look a little bit brighter. And I suppose I could say good pictures aren't done in the dark, and YouTube thumbnails tend to work better if they are set brighter. Mind you, dark can also work if you know how to set up the thumbnail. Okay, to make my little thumbnails, I use Adobe Photoshop, and I'll go through the processes here that you'll see, and you'll see a radical change to the original photograph. It's really important to have a good photo to start with. Grab some of the artwork from the box, the logos. I've grabbed those, taken some pictures of them, I've cut them out because these may be incorporated in my design. Okay, let's crank the level so we can pull more contrast on our Max D monster. We could play with some filters. If I put mosaic filters over this, it looks like a Minecraft Max D. Or I could be crazy and apply glowing edges. Basically in Photoshop you can do anything. Let's change the background layer to a nice strong blue. Or maybe I'll change the black, I'm just playing with colours here. No, let's go back to blue. Okay, let's add a white stroke around the Max D layer in Photoshop, and then we'll add a drop shadow to that. Maybe it's time to insert a Monster Jam logo in the groin of Max D. Let's stroke that and add a drop shadow to that as well. On the Monster Jam logo, I'll add some texture and I'll also lighten it up a bit. It was looking a bit dark. And now for my little signature piece, I add some red eyes to the Max D figure. So the secret's out about the red eyes. I dare say everyone will copy that now. Oh, I might change the background to black. No, it's all a bit too dark, isn't it? Let's change it the other way. Let's change it to white and see how it looks. And you know what? I think white works here. Now with the background white, maybe I'll punch out the drop shadow to be bigger around the Max D figure. And I think that's enough tinkering and playing in Photoshop. Let's compare this back to the original photograph that I had. And we'll flip-flop around between the two. Maybe you can have your say on what you think here. I sort of think that's done, and it sort of says me in that thumbnail. It looks like one of my thumbnails. I do work hard to make thumbnails that don't look like other YouTubers' thumbnails, but sadly that doesn't stop people from coming along and basically mimicking your style or just basically stealing your whole thumbnail. And sure, plenty of that has gone on over the years. But hey, that's the way some people operate here. Okay, I think I've yabbered on enough here. What's really important, I'll say it again, you need a good picture to start with. If you haven't got that, you're going to have a crappy thumbnail. Okay, I hope I've taught you something here. It's been a question asked many times over. Thanks for watching and bye for now.